Good afternoon, and welcome to the inaugural He Is Me Institute's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. program entitled Kings in the Classroom. As a board member of He Is Me and the president of Girard College, I know the challenges educators and students face today. Dr. King's educational journey included time in Boston, Massachusetts. He and Coretta's time in Boston was commemorated this past weekend with the unveiling of the Embrace Memorial. The King family is a shining example of placing others first. This is a common practice of public classroom teachers daily in this country. Some of my experiences in the classroom shaped me, and I carry my students with me to this day. They gave me stories of love and appreciation, along with stories of growth, and some were mixed with tears. As a Black man in the classroom, I saw my impact every single day. I joined the He Is Me board in the same spirit to make an impact. I see their impact and I know we need more of it. So before we begin, I want to ask that you pull out your phones and scan the QR code on your screen. This will help empower you to join He Is Me in making a difference today. Your donation today will help funnel more Black male educators into classrooms and will help support those currently teaching. We want to recruit, retain, and retire Black male educators, and you can help make that happen today in the spirit of Dr. King. A donation of $50 will go a long way and make a huge difference. That said, we have a great program with great leaders in the educational field joining us. Our goal today is to help paint a picture of Black males' impact in the classroom and what those teachers are experiencing week in and week out. When we look at studies and demographic data, Black males account for less than 2% of public educators nationwide. These same educators also leave education at a higher rate. Why is this the case? We know that there are systemic obstacles to shifting this narrative. We also know that when a Black male teacher is in a student's life, they are 5 times more likely to graduate from high school. These stories of impact are not commonly shared. Today, we share them in the name and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King is commonly quoted by lawmakers and politicians, especially in the months of January and February. We hope that his impact is spoken about and acts as a guiding light in all of the months of the year. Dr. King believed in education and the power of love. He believed that love conquered all. That same love was also his weapon against oppression. Today, we carry that love to reach and impact kids in the classroom and our lives. If education is the great equalizer, then the love of a teacher is a ladder to equity. We want to thank today's event sponsor, State Street Foundation, for their continued support. We also want to thank the Leadership Brainery in Boston, Massachusetts for hosting us today. My name is Christopher Goins, and I'm the proud president of Girard College and a proud He Is Me board member. And I welcome you to Kings in the Classroom.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I could not be there in person. COVID is still alive and well, and unfortunately has tap danced its way into my household, me and my wife. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity and just to be amongst a wonderful group of people who I call friends and brothers. And so thank you and happy Martin Luther King Day. A little bit about myself. My name is Everett Brewster, and I am a leadership coach with Lynch Leadership Academy. And prior to that, I was an elementary school principal for 3 years in Boston Public Schools and a humanities teacher in Boston Public Schools as well at the Lilla G. Frederick Pilot Middle School, where I am now co-chair of the governing board. So a little bit about myself. I'm just gonna make sure I'm staying within the bounds. I am a native of Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised. Can't take that out of me, and this is one of my favorite places. And I went to school in Nashville. I'm also a proud graduate of Vanderbilt University, so I love Tennessee. I guess you're wondering how in the world did I end up here? And I'll get to that in a bit. My mother was a teacher, and when I was in elementary school, I went to the exact same school that my mom went to, my aunts went to, my cousins went to, and my mom happened to also be a teacher at the school that I went to in elementary, which means she was friends with all of my teachers. So I could not get away with anything. And that did not make it worse. Was that my cousin was the secretary. And at some point, my sister was a para. at my school. So this whole idea of it takes a village to raise a child was literal reality for me. Around first grade or so, my teacher informed my mom about this program called CLUE, which was called Creative Learning in a Unique Environment. I didn't know anything about it, and it was a gifted program for students. It was a wonderful opportunity for me as I got to go to a different school for 2 or 3 days out of the week. Also the privilege of me being one of the few students, my dad actually would take me from my school, pick me up, take me to the other school, pick me back up and bring me back until some other students from my school also joined. So it was a great opportunity for me. I loved it, but every time that I left and it opened the door for me, I left behind 20 other friends and students who questioned why they weren't special and allowed to go along with me. This also led the doors to be open for me to go to John P. Freeman, which is an optional school in Memphis. We call it like an exam school. But even there, I was, hit hard with this reality or this belief that I did not fit in and I was not smart enough. Now, I made all A's in elementary school. I was a valedictorian of my 6th grade class, which is fun, right? But in my mind, I was like, okay, I go to this school. They've been here since they were in 1st grade. They were smarter than me. Their school was not in the same neighborhood as mine. They had a mom and a dad dropping them off and picking them up. They had nice cars. And then in actuality, when my mom dropped me off, I had to reach outside the door to open it because it didn't open from the inside. So all these things were happening and getting in the way just for me to realize that I did fit in and I did belong. And some of those folks are some of my closest friends and were recently at and in my wedding. This again opened another door for me to go to Central High School, which again, you have to have certain grades to make sure you got in this program. I did the things, I made the grades, I did the activities, I was in honors and AP, and still that wasn't good enough. And it was for someone, a teacher, to credit or discredit or question my abilities. That particular teacher told me that Vanderbilt, oh, sweetheart, you should try a state school that's more your speed. And so if she felt that way about me, what does she feel about other people? Not only that, she made that very clear when she said to me and to my class, I only come to school for you guys, my AP students. I can't stand those standard kids. And to me, at 16 years old, I didn't understand what was so standard about the friends that I had, that I was in the band with, that I ate lunch with, and I hung out with. And it did not make sense to me. I was not confronted with that again until I got to the Little G. Frederick, which is how I ended up in Boston. I applied to teach for America, and Boston was my 13th choice, y'all. 13th. I just threw it on the list. I was trying to stay in the South. I was trying to be wherever Black folks were, and I didn't even know there were Black people in Boston, right? I got here, ended up going, my very first day, a young man walked in, and I'm like, what is happening? He came in cursing, had a conversation, and the special ed teacher told me, hey, don't push him too hard, right? Because it just helps him blow up. He doesn't read too well. You don't want those problems. That student who I now call my son escorted my mom recently in my wedding and wanted you all to know that he's doing very well, graduated on time. And so for me, it was a reality that this problem was way bigger than Dr. Gorman and her instances at Central High School, but there was a discredit and a disbelief in the capabilities of Black boys across our nation. And so expectations often varied from classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher, student to student. And so this prompted me to seek out leadership opportunities and become a school leader. If I was able to provide the conditions that my team was able to provide, or the conditions that I was able to provide in my classroom, that prompted students and provided opportunities for them to feel seen, heard, and successful. Despite a zip code, despite whatever code, IEP 504, that is why I decided to be a principal. And I loved every moment of my time at the Holmes Elementary School, Holmes Innovation School. And it was very tough actually for me. There are people who are probably online now that I was contemplating if I should take on the opportunity to be a leadership coach, but through the prompting, the pushing of my wife, my family, my friends, this was an opportunity to make sure that I can help other school leaders provide those opportunities and expand my reach. And so when I think about, my upbringing, it was this idea that it perpetuated this idea of what Du Bois said is the talented 10th, which is great. I believe in empowering, but all of our students, not just the 10%, are talented in their own right. And what I valued so much about my educational experience in Memphis is that there were several outlets for students to feel successful. My sister could care less, and she would always say, like, you would get upset if you got a C. I was happy that I passed, but she got a full ride to several schools because she was in the band. And so my job and my push is for us to seek out those opportunities and find the ways in which all of our students are talented. And it doesn't always look like pen and paper and academic grades. And so when you ask the question, why do we need more Black men in leadership? The Southern Black Baptist in me thought about a few words, and those words were passion, purpose, position, and power. And when I think about the passion, is that we can often instill within our students because we reflect what they see. And I believe this wholeheartedly, the students cannot be what they do not see. And so when you have a passion about something, and Black men, particularly educators making up 2%, that passion shines through and students are attached to you. And I think that is then attached to purpose. And when you know your purpose, that shines through in your ability to connect with young people, connect with individuals, and everyone benefits. Now think about the position that you have. Students are watching every move that you make. Right. There are oftentimes, and LaMarcus will say this, there's only so much you can do for me, but a lot of the things that I've learned has been from you. And at one point I lost one of my students to gun violence. And I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. It was the most painful thing that I've probably ever experienced. And losing him, I said, I need to create a boundary and barrier between me and the students. I need to protect myself. And it was one of my friends and colleagues who's like, it is in you, it is in your purpose. And students are going to be attracted to the light that is within you. And so what I want to push people is when you are in a position, you can advocate for those students, right? I had to advocate for myself with Dr. Gorman, and I still, planned on and eventually got into the schools that I wanted. But it is even more purposeful when somebody is in position to fight for those students who nobody else is fighting for. And sometimes they're fighting against themselves because several people have told them who they are and not allowing them to see the power, which is the last one, within them. And so when I think about those things, and I think about all the ways in which Black men as educators are super impactful, and we talked about earlier in the intro, that you have the power to change and provide transformational opportunities for students. And I think this work is important. I'm grateful to be here, and I look forward to hearing for all the things that we have coming forward. And it does not take, it has to go beyond one person. You're going to hear about a district later who is doing this work. And I'm just proud and privileged to be in the company of these amazing individuals. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to learning from everyone.
Dr. King loved education. He and many others believed it was the gateway towards equality and equity. And we see the benefits of a Black male educator in the classroom. Students are more likely to enroll in college. Black kids perform better. We see a reduced rate of expulsion with students, and we notice that there's an increased equality and fairness for everyone. We want you to partner with us at all levels. We need your help everywhere to make these differences. Our goal is to expand into some strategic cities and continue to make these differences. You can support us today with a donation by simply scanning the QR code on your screen or going to heisme.org. You can also make a difference by helping us identify strategic partners in these cities. If you believe your organization can help us make a difference, contact us today.
Good morning, everyone. Marlon Stiles, Superintendent here at Middletown City School District. Honored to be with you on such a special occasion. Honored and privileged to have the opportunity to represent Middletown School District. More importantly, the Admiral Squad. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about the framework of the Admiral Squad, talk about the intent and the commitment that we've made, and also want to highlight the importance of collaboration. So let's start with that. The Admiral Squad has surfaced and it's been implemented simply because we've embraced this idea that we could not do it alone as a school district. So we partner with Mr. Hendricks and his team at He Is Me Institute. We partner with Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. We also partner with Kim Smith, the director of the Center of Inclusive Innovation at Digital Promise. And as a collective four-party group, we spent a lot of time going through inclusive innovation design, and we have framed up this Admiral Squad. So if you find some inspiration today, first, I hope that is the idea of bring some others to the table, give them a seat and give them a voice, and allow the collaboration to inspire possibilities for your organization and how you want to inspire children. Number two, I want to talk about this idea of the Admiral Squad. The Admiral Squad is a brotherhood. It's our own authentic affinity group for current Black males in the profession here in Middletown City School District, a chance for us as a brotherhood to grow a close bond and really lean on each other as we try to make a difference for the students inside of our district. The Admiral Squad has a number of 35 different admirals, Black males, who are already part of the district. We convene a number of times throughout the year, and it's our sense of really leaning on each other to become content experts, to set the standard for being educators in the district, to talk about different ways we can get out in the community, make our presence felt, but more importantly, make a difference in the families, in the community, different organizations, and provide mentorship for our students throughout the community and throughout the district. The affinity group also, we set different times and different targets for professional development needs that we may have, bringing guest speakers. But the room is specifically isolated for Black males who are employed in the district. We use that affinity group, the Admiral Squad, as a retention mechanism for the Black males in our system currently, right? We have 35 different Black males who we use to lean on each other to make sure we not only stay in the profession, but we stay in the district and we stay together to really impact our children. We believe that retention mechanism will allow us to ultimately inspire more Black males to get into the profession, which leads me to point number 3. Point number 3 is the Admiral Squad's intent is to inspire more Black males to get into the profession, like I said before. We have made the bold commitment here in Middletown City School District over the next 5 hiring seasons. We've said it publicly and we've said it unapologetically. We are committed to hiring 25 additional Black male classroom educators over the next 5 hiring seasons. And the admirals are going to be responsible for making that happen. And they are taking center stage right now as we speak. The admirals have partnered with He Is Me to bring the I Am King program to our 6th grade center. Our juniors and seniors who are Black males that are interested in mentoring and making a difference in our youth are coming down and providing that mentorship at our 6th grade center. We have partnered with Miami University and other higher ed institutions. We are our target demographic are Black males who are freshmen, who are undecided. Our admirals are going on to campus, interacting with Black student unions, which is the plan, and trying to recruit those students to get involved in the I Am King program. If you get a chance, hop on the website. I highly encourage you to bring that to your campus. Through those recruitment mechanisms of bringing youth into mentoring situations, it is our passionate belief that we'll be able to inspire Black males to consider education as a potential career pathway. With that being said, our hope is to inspire them to get into teacher preparation programs at higher ed institutions and ultimately come back to the school district where they started and be hired as classroom teachers and ultimately educate, inspire, and mentor the students they originally started working with when they served as mentors here in Middletown City School District. It is a unique framework. We believe that the Admiral Squad will be the true difference maker in this whole idea of diversifying our staff, addressing hard to fill positions, addressing the current teacher shortage that we face here across this country. Black males in education, that teacher shortage has been present for a number of years, and the Admiral Squad is here to do something about it. We're in our first year of implementation. As I said before, we could not do it alone without the partnerships and the collaboration. More importantly, we would not be able to do it unless we had safe space in which we as admirals could come together, lean on each other, and begin to explore different concepts. Again, I want to encourage you to consider what your framework might look like in your school district. I encourage you to brand it, be your authentic selves, to explore it. We could have easily got certain ties. We could have easily gotten polos. We decided that it was important to us to feel like ourselves, right? Powerful, inspirational, encouraging, highly educated, motivational young Black men who are dedicated to really making a difference in the youth. And we felt like purple hoodies would be able to represent that. In Middletown, our mascot is the Middies. The Middie is a midshipman, which is the lowest ranking official in the Navy. An admiral is the highest ranking official in the Navy. So it sets the standard for excellence for Black males who are educators inside the district. And I couldn't be more excited to be part of the group. More importantly, I cannot wait to see the impact that the Admiral Squad has here in Middletown City School District. Last what I'll say is this: please have the courage Embrace the courage given the current world today. Have the courage to pursue a commitment such as this because your students deserve it. As a Black man coming up, as a young Black kid coming up in the education system, just like anyone else in the statistics, and you see it in the research, I have very little access to Black males in the educational system, even all the way through college. So the Admiral Squad is a courageous effort that we have made to make sure that students of all ages, students of all backgrounds, students of all races can be inspired and impacted by Black males who are educators, and they get to interact with them every single day. So I encourage you to find the courage to rally your core group, to explore partnerships, to consider different ways you can bring people to the table, to dream up new ways, new inclusive ways, as Kim Smith would say, inclusive ways to make sure children have access to Black males in education. Awfully inspired by your work. Hopefully get a chance to cross paths. And I want to thank Mr. Hendricks and everyone at He Is Me Institute for everything you've done here in Middletown City School District, but more importantly, what you're doing for students across the country. Continue to rise up, be in reason. Awfully proud to be part of Admiral Squad, #Midi Rising. Robert, thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Superintendent Stiles, for your dedication to Black male teachers in your district. As someone who spent significant time in the classroom during my career, fully understand how impactful it is to have someone like you at the helm of a school system, not just for the Black men in the school, but for all students, staff, families that you support. My name is Devin Morris. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Teachers Lounge. We do work to recruit, revitalize, and retain educators of color throughout the greater Boston area and beyond. And I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. John Travis, former teacher and principal in Boston Public Schools. Dr. Travis now works for the Barr Foundation, where he provides philanthropic support to education nonprofits such as He Is Me Institute and the Teachers Lounge, to name just a few, who are working towards large-scale equity. And so for the next 20 minutes, Dr. Travis will share more about his experiences in his various roles throughout the education system. Living out Dr. King's vision, John's career shows that in order to truly reach our mission, we need collaboration from multiple entities who are rowing in the same direction of equity. But before we start, Dr. Travis, would love it if you could let us know a little bit more about the Barr Foundation and your role.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here, honestly, an honor to kind of be connected with so many people like yourself, Brewster, that we heard from earlier, folks that are in the work, supporting young people as men of color in this work. Yeah, so I just feel honored to be here. So yeah, I started the Barr Foundation a couple months ago, but the Barr Foundation is a local philanthropic organization here in Boston that's committed to investing here regionally across New England, across three main areas. We do work in arts and creativity, in climate and the environment, as well as education. And I'm part of the education team. And the foundation sees itself as both a steward of resources, as well as a catalyst to innovation that is focused on the thriving of people, creativity, and the natural world that we're a part of. So it's a really great organization. I've been excited to be a part of it. And honestly, one of the reasons that I wound up there is it's like stated and lived commitment and focus on centering racial equity, which I think is core to the mission, and has only become more a part of what Barr does in its public facing work over the last few years. So I'm just really excited to be a part of that work and that organization.
Excellent. And we are absolutely thrilled to have you here today as well. So how do you see yourself and the Barr Foundation living out the legacy of Dr. King inside of classrooms?
Yeah, and that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
So I could, the first thing I just talk about is just myself personally. So I'm a product of Philadelphia. So I grew up in Philadelphia, product of Philadelphia Public Schools. I grew up in West Philadelphia. Born and raised, yes. In a small, like an African-American community in West Philadelphia. And, it's home. And it's funny, as I was taking the training here today, there's lots of different versions of my story I tell people. For whatever reason, today's MLK Day. And I thought, honestly, I thought I'm biracial. My dad is white, my mom's African American, but my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, is a product of North Carolina.
Mhm.
So he grew up. He was born in a sharecropping family in relatively rural North Carolina. He moved to Philadelphia, the city where I grew up, as a part of the Great Migration in the 50s and 60s, as folks moved north looking for economic mobility and opportunity. And I've been thinking about all the ways that we stand on the shoulders of the people who have come before. And I think about the world that my grandfather was born into and raised in, and the opportunities he had, and the opportunities my mother had, and the opportunities that I've had. And all of that has been impacted by the work of Dr. King.
Sure.
So I'm a little nervous to like associate anything I've actually done with his work, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like I hope that it's been inspired by that. But yeah, so again, you definitely have that sense of like wonder and like just feeling like you want to live out a legacy of other people's work. But I became an educator in part because I got to see. Growing up in the neighborhood I did, I was a product of opportunity. I got to receive educational opportunities that were not afforded to every kid in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I didn't go to my neighborhood local school. That opened up doors to me. And it's just not okay for us to live in a world where economic mobility and educational opportunity is like reserved for some. Like we have to do it for all kids.
Sure.
So yeah, I became an educator, became a teacher, at least in small part because I wanted to be a part of joining that struggle for equity and freedom for all kids, all people. It's interesting. I think about the like small impacts that it has. I'm sure we'll talk about it at other times, but even early on in my career, I was amazed by just my identity and my positionality in the world, the experiences I've had, and the sort of how I show up in the work and what that means to the young people I've had a chance to work. I'm sure you know. But as we think about the work though with the foundation, at Bar, I get to I had this tremendous opportunity to like lead work that is in support work that is focused on seeing more Devin Morrises in the world, right?
Yep.
And that's what you're about. That's what your work is about. You want to see people of color thriving in the field. And I'm sitting in a different seat now than the one I was when I was a classroom teacher and a principal. I'm really just trying to support folks like you and support organizations like He Is Me to see the vision so that every kid gets these kinds of opportunities,
right.
Opportunities to work with a Black male educator. Bar funds a teacher's lounge. You mentioned He Is Me. But I got to inherit that work because of the vision of the foundation and the people who came before me. We're right now engaged with partnership with TNTP. We've been partnering with local districts here in New England to build the infrastructure to diversify their educator workforce at scale across multiple districts. And it's an honor for me to kind of feel like I can come close to supporting and enabling that work from the perspective of the foundation. So
yeah. And that coalition building and collaboration is so absolutely essential. And you have, I would say, honored that you say 2 months, which I'm sure has felt like a whirlwind. From day one, I think you have shown that has been a priority for you.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your experience as a student.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your experience in the classroom and what other supports did you need as a classroom teacher?
Yeah, so when I think about this work in classrooms, and I think Mr. Brewster spoke to it earlier about that having that belief in the potential of young people.
Yeah.
So much of that to me is like predicated on people having belief in us, like the men of color who are entering the work, because the work of education, it's hard. Yeah. Like it's just not easy. Like I think sometimes we can kind of like say, oh, anybody can do this. And I'm sure, yes, lots of people can do this work. They can step into it, but it's a craft, like it's art and science. Like, and it takes time to like hone that. And so you're gonna take licks. And I honestly think for people of color, like who step into these spaces, who are your champions? Who are the people who see something in you and remind you of who they know you are, and more than that, who they know you can be. Right. And I stand on the shoulders of giants. For me, it was Denise Dunham. She was the principal of the high school where I worked for a number of years, who saw things in me, who believed in me. She hired me. She would have conversations with me like, okay, so when you're a principal, when you're leading your school, like she did that kind of investment in me.
Yeah.
She's the reason I went to graduate school. I'm not a school leader. I'm not in this seat if it's not for her. And I'm curious, honestly, for you though. I mean, you've been in this work for a while. Like what were some of the things that you felt like you needed in the work to thrive?
First of all, shout out Denise Dunham. Make sure we give love and props where it's due. And so what I would say is similar to the ways in which our students of color in particular don't see enough of us in the profession. And those that they do see, if we are overworked, underappreciated, undervalued, why would they ever view this as a viable profession? But what was also true for myself as an early career educator of color is that I didn't have veteran educators of color to look up to for guidance and support. I didn't have OGs in the game who could provide the work that or the support that I needed at that time to know what was possible, to know what pathways there were and support along that journey. And I truly believe it's why organizations like He Is Me and the Teachers Lounge, for example, are necessary, but that collaboration and community cultivation for educators of color, and particularly Black male educators outside of the classroom, is just as important as within the classroom, until our schools start to mirror our student populations better. Then we have to kind of step outside of our school buildings in order to build that community of mentorship. And shameless plug, but Rob and the folks at He Is Me have been really influential, and folks like Ed Brewster in supporting. We have a Classroom Leaders of Color Fellowship, where we pair early career educators of color with veteran educators of color from across the district and outside of the district. Again, until our school buildings mirror what we need within to be able to have those veteran educators of color, then we have to find them. Because again, I didn't have them. I imagine you didn't have them.
I in my entirety of my teaching career, I think I have worked in a school with one other Black male educator.
Yeah.
And like for the like it's and that's not to say that that folks aren't out there and that people aren't in the work, but just not at the levels of scale. What is it, 2%?
That's right.
There's so few of us. But the thing I reflect on is like what does it mean for us to be in the work?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could tell 100 stories about what does it mean to be in the work. But there was one student in particular that always comes to mind anytime I think about this. And I don't know that it was anything about me, even as an educator, but sometimes people see things in you or connect to you for like no reason other than the fact that you walk around in skin that's like theirs and you probably had experiences. So they give you favor, perhaps that you did. I mean, I was an early career teacher. I'm not sure I deserve the favor this young man gave to me, but I watched a student who walked through my classroom door, my math classroom doors as a freshman in high school, who was never been seen as an honor student or a strong math learner. I watched him work incredibly hard. And by the time this young man was a senior in high school, he was in BC calculus and he graduated high school with college credits. And he wrote a note in the yearbook the last year I was there at the school where he told me that he had planned to drop out because it was all he knew. Like everybody else, like his older cousins who'd gone through school, they'd all dropped out. They hadn't finished high school. He figured that would be his path.
Yeah.
And like the fact that he saw something in me as his educator that like made even a small difference in that. But again, I know it's not me though. Again, I'm standing on the shoulders of I was in a school with that school leader who had a vision, and I worked with other educators who also believed in him when I passed them off the next year, and he was in honors classes, who believed in him. So it's never about one person. Like we make this about Mr. Morris or Mr. Travis, like we're never going to get there. It has to be that kind of collaboration. But I'm curious for you, like what were some of those? Like, what are some of those things for you?
Yeah, so I think we were thinking with regard to sort of what we didn't have, right? And so It was very important to me stepping into the profession. And then so now I'm in year 13 in education, thinking back to what I didn't have and how do we pay it forward and ensure that the next generation does. And so thinking about how we've been advocates for Black male teachers in all of my roles in education. And I think something as simple as when I was a school leader, or backtrack, when I was a classroom teacher, it was about forging community with other Black male teachers, again, within our building, but then also outside of our building. And I gave praise to Dr. Travis Bristol for actually being the sort of inspiration for crafting the Teachers Lounge, because he was convening Black male educators long before it was a cool thing to do, or the thing that needed to happen in education, that as many think. Then as I progressed to leadership roles, I made something as simple as being the first face that a candidate of color, particularly Black male candidates, saw when they walked into a building, right? And so those are, I think, the little things, but then coaching and mentorship across my time in education for the younger generation of Black male teachers, because I recognize, one, we don't have us in the profession, and two, how absolutely important it is that we remain in a profession that we have every reason to run kicking and screaming from. And so how do we change the systems and supports that then would keep us in the profession is the question.
Yeah, I think it's an important one. It's one that I know that I'm thankful to be in the role that I'm in, because our foundation is like committed to seeing like people of color thrive in roles in education in service of excellence for kids. So at the end of the day, it's about having impact in a positive way in the lives of young people to ensure that they have excellent outcomes. In particular for the students that have been traditionally marginalized. So many students of color have been traditionally marginalized in America's like educational system.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I would just add is that as a nonprofit that serves all educators of color across the Commonwealth, we are not naive to the fact that there are very specific needs that Black male educators have. And so we are not in the business of saying that we will provide all services to all educators of color, including Black male educators, and we don't need any support. But this is where the community and collaboration comes into play, because the work that He Is Me is doing serves the very specific needs of Black male teachers that we couldn't do on our own. And that I don't think happens enough in the profession to be able to say that we can work together to provide those supports. So I'm gonna move us along. Why would you say is the lack of Black male teachers in a child's life detrimental? And what are some examples of evidence of your impact?
So we need to have Black male teachers because we have Black male students. Students need to be able to see themselves in the work. Our schools need to reflect the communities that they're a part of. I think that there's a real cost that comes when schools don't reflect that. But we need Black female teachers. We need white male teachers. We need teachers that represent the like rich diversity of our entire nation. And honestly, like when I think back on like the legacy of Dr. King, I think that's the thing he was pointing us towards. Like if we look at the world and we see things, we see that only 2% of our educators are Black male teachers. And we know that that is not what they represent in our broader community. It means that something is not working. Something is not right, because there's no reason that we should have that kind of disproportionality anywhere. And I think it matters for a whole range of reasons. It matters for like what students see and how they connect to school, feeling themselves there. I think it has an impact on what people believe, but it also has an impact on narrative and story. Like how do schools see themselves? Like what are they trying to do? What are they about? And if the voices of Black male teachers are not in the room as teachers are planning what lessons look like, or as school leaders are planning what professional learning looks like in their community, as district leaders are planning the strategic initiatives, like if they're not Black men at those tables having that kind of impact, if our voice isn't there, because we have experiences that are unique, They're unique to our experience. It doesn't make them any better or worse than anybody else's, but they're unique. And we also know that our school systems have not at scale figured out how to serve young Black men as students. So knowing that, we'd be remiss not to think about it. And again, I shared that one story, but there's other kids. I mean, there's another female student who I had this is when I was a math teacher, but she had come from another district. And because that district didn't have the same sort of equity forward focus in the kind of work that they did, she was denied an opportunity to take an advanced class in high school because her guidance counselor didn't believe that she could thrive in that class.
Yep.
And then she comes to our school, and because of a choice somebody made somewhere else, she was like a year behind her classmates when she came to our district, because we had those sort of like forward thinking, like equity centered processes and structures. And so like, I can't help but wonder, like, and this is why teachers, yes, but also, guidance counselors and social workers and clinicians and special educators and, like a whole range, like we need people at all phases of the work. But I can't help but wonder if she'd been working with a school counselor who was a Black man who saw potential in this young woman, and her and her mom said she wanted to take an advanced class, like, would that have been a different conversation? Would they have said, yes, you can take that advanced class?
Yeah.
Like it comes down to, it's system stuff, but it also comes down to those small, minute, like quiet moments, where decisions get made that set people on trajectories.
We are running short on time. Otherwise, I would go down the rabbit hole of guidance counselor stories and limiting potential and all the what ifs. So I'm going to ask our final question. So as working towards education equity requires input, collaboration, and collective strategy from districts, colleges, philanthropists, and advocates. Given your range of experience across sort of several of those entities, what's one shared message that you want all of these stakeholders to walk away with today?
Well, I'll say this. I don't believe that the answer exists in some back room at a foundation. So I don't believe that. I think the answer is out in the field and the people doing the work. So if there's anything, like I want to know what you think about this, Devin, more than anything, because you are in the work. You're the one that's doing the work. I sit in a seat where I'm just trying to support and invest, but like what do you think is the most important thing?
Yeah. So I think there are two quotes that stand out to me. One, anybody else coming to save us?
Yeah.
So there's no reason that we can't be the ones to do the work. And then there's a Teddy Roosevelt quote that says, do what you can with what you have, where you are. And I think it's the right sentiment, but I would alter it just a bit. Do what you can with what you have access to, where you are. And I think too often we think money is the only resource. Money's good. Please continue to pour into He Is Me in the Teacher's Lounge. But time, energy, knowledge, and probably most important to me is networks and community are all resources that we can use to support those who are already doing incredible work. Or to incite the next impactful idea. Because to your point, it's not sitting in, I don't actually believe that it's sitting in any given one entity. I actually think it's coming with that collaboration across stakeholders to bring student voice in, to bring family voice in, to bring classroom educator voice in, which I think is often left out, and particularly when we talk about marginalized educators, so educators of color, and particularly Black male teachers. We know we can't do the work alone, and we can't wait for others to come along and save our babies for our future.
Yeah. And I think I would say too, to anybody that's out there listening, like we invite partnership, like the Bar Foundation's been excited to support organizations like He Is Me and like the Teacher's Lounge. I know this entire event today is sponsored by State Street. We want to invite other partners into the work. Like if you see this work as being important and being important for the impacts of the lives of young people, like we invite you to partner with us. Because again, I don't think that our foundation or any of these individual organizations necessarily have the whole thing, But that doesn't mean together in coalition and collaboration, we can't get there. And that's, again, isn't that the legacy of Dr. King when it comes down to it? It wasn't about one man trying to do work. It was collaboration and coalition across multiple places. So.
That's right. So we actually have a question from Facebook.
Ooh, there you go.
Oh, look at this, interactive. Shout out to Ron. Is there a bond between Black men that can be bottled and brought into schools? Why is the culture needed?
Yes, I think there is. I think that there is like a set of common shared experiences. There's a shorthand. There's a knowing look. I mean, when did we meet, Devin? Was it a couple months ago?
Yeah.
And we've had a handful of conversations over that time, but there's certain shorthand for like the kind of experiences, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a certain shorthand for the kind of experience about what it means to walk through this world as a Black man. It's different than a whole lot of other kinds of experiences. And I think that like kind of collective bond, when like people talk about like wanting to bottle it up, like I actually think it's less about bottling it up, but it's more about like rolling up your sleeves, right? It's about leaning in and finding whatever way that you can in whatever role or seat you're sitting in. If you're a parent, right? Like your engagement, your support of your school community. If you're somebody who can give, then giving your resources. If you're somebody who has time, then like asking the question. And if even if you feel outside of it, even if you feel like far away from the work, it's like asking, okay, what can I do in my role in order to support the thriving of a group of people? I think every individual person kind of has to ask themselves the question, like, what can I do?
Right.
How can I stand up? How can I be a leader in some small way? Again, it'll really vary, but
yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that folks can do. What do you think?
I'm struggling with this, and it's a great question. Whoever asked this on Facebook, you can't bottle up Blackness. And so what I think in an agreement in terms of what you brought to the surface is what we often talk about in terms of the value that educators of color, and particularly Black male teachers, bring to the classroom, which is vast. There are certain aspects that cannot be bottled up. It is our identities, lived experiences. But what we often talk about are things that should be common to all teachers.
Yeah.
A belief that students, particularly students of color, can succeed.
Yes.
And are deserving of the same quality of education as their white counterparts. That doesn't require Blackness at the center of it in order to ring true. And so there are aspects of what it means to engage the whole child, the entire family, and value and honor their experiences that falls outside of that every single educator should bring to the table. And we need to do a better job of training teachers to have those skill sets and mindsets. And there are aspects to, again, our lived experiences as Black male students who then became Black male teachers that can't be bottled up.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you said, because I think it's important to always hold on to the fact that this isn't just the work of Black male teachers.
That's right.
And sometimes, unfortunately, we frame it as if the problem is we just don't have enough Black male teachers. And if we did, like the whole problem would like go away. The problem, it's not just that, it has to be all of us. All of us have to share a vision of all children thriving at the highest levels. We just have to. And to me, again, that's the legacy. When you talk about the legacy of Dr. King, I think the legacy of Dr. King in this work is it has to be an all of us effort.
Sure.
And if only 2% of our educators are Black male teachers, then there's still work to be done.
That's right. And I think, the biggest piece that I hang on to with regard to the work that He Is Me is doing is about the retirement component of this work and of their mission. And that can't happen. We can recruit until we're blue in the face, more and more Black male teachers, but if we're not doing the necessary work to ensure that we remain in the profession and retire from the profession, then it's all for naught.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Travis.
Thank you.
Time and insight on this important day. I also want to take a moment to invite you all to join us in continuing the legacy of Dr. King. With your donation, He Is Me Institute will be able to build pathways for Black men to become and remain teachers in your community, just as they've done in both Boston and Middletown. So what you can do is make a donation today, but also, and I think just as important, is spread the word to your network about He Is Me Institute and their opportunity to also contribute. And now we'll hear from Robert Hendricks, He Is Me founder and CEO.
Now, the educators you heard from today are part of the solution, and we're inviting you to be part of the solution too. With your help, we can ensure that more students are enrolling in college. We can ensure that Black kids are performing better. We can reduce the rate of expulsion, and we can ensure that there is increased equality and fairness for everyone. With your help, we can continue our growth at He Is Me. Visit heisme.org or scan the QR code on your screen, and you can be part of the solution.
Thank you for joining today's Kings in Classrooms event. My name is Robert J. Hendricks III, and I'm the founder and Chief Executive Officer of He Is Me Institute. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. continues to impact social norms and expectations. Nearly 60 years after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we are still seeing political discourse and legislation that strips away rights and the progress we've made as a country. But we know that the work to bring King's dream lives on in the work of communities. Organizations like the Teachers Lounge and the Bar Foundation help keep the dream alive. Dr. King was an educator. Dr. King taught the masses, and not just from the pulpit and the podium, but with his actions and in his heart. He is perhaps the most outstanding example of the lasting legacy a Black male teacher can have on students. I grew up needing to see more teachers like myself in front of the classroom. We see that students perform stronger and gain a more worldly view when their teachers are an expression of their identities. So let's do just that. Let's give students what they need and what they deserve. On your screen is a QR code that would allow you to support the mission and the work we are doing at He Is Me Institute. I challenge you to join us and be a part of this solution. Your support will empower us to recruit, retain, and retire more Black males in teaching. Your support will help us implement programming that builds stronger teachers. Your support improves the classroom experience for boys and girls in school today who want to live out Dr. King's dream, and in turn, that experience leads to a more prosperous life for them and their families in the future. I hope that you will support us today. Thank you.
All right, we are back at the ending portion of today's Kings in Classroom event with some questions from the audience that we're excited to answer. Again, I'm Robert Hendricks, the founder and chief executive officer, and I'm joined.
I am Janelle Ingerman, the chief impact officer here at He Is Me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Before we get to the question, I want to give a special thank you to the Leadership Brainery for offering this amazing space to do this event today. So I have some questions from the audience across social media, some folks here live in this room with us. So let's jump in, Janelle, see what we can answer together.
Okay.
First question, why focus on Black males and not other populations? Why focus on Black males and not other populations? Any thoughts?
That's a great question. And I think there's been kind of like a trend today in the conversation thinking about the need in education at large and kind of like the work that's still to be done as it relates to, teacher diversification. And so when we think about why Black male teachers, that's our part of the work. It's not the only part of the work. There's many other facets and just stakeholders in that work as we think about the greater, population of teachers and the teacher workforce in general. But that's kind of where He Is Me really kind of digs in in support of the less than 2% of teachers that are Black males.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's first part of the answer is that's what we focus on. And there's a need for Black male teachers because they're not represented and what they bring to the table is not represented. And there's another piece of the conversation, which is the impact of Black male teachers.
Right.
So it's not enough to say we have more Black male teachers because they aren't present, but when students have Black male teachers, they actually do better academically. If all student populations, not just the Black boys, you name a student group, they probably do better when they have a Black male teacher. So it's really beyond because they're Black males. It's more about the impact that they have as Black males.
I like that.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go back to you to answer this question first. How does your experience help shape your work at He Is Me?
Whoa, do I have the long answer version? Time for the long answer version?
Medium.
Or the short answer? Okay. My experience, I think, has had a lot to do with my work at He Is Me, down to really my experience as a student, right? And starting off in spaces that did feel really affirming as a student, and being in school settings that didn't feel really affirming as a student. And so really kind of having those polar opposite experiences within my own experience was really telling about what just education looked like at a large level. I didn't graduate high school with the best connection to education, right? I definitely didn't see myself stepping into education as an educator. And a lot of the reason for that was because of an experience that really didn't show me that teaching or education was a pathway for me. Yeah, when I was in elementary school, I had a lot of Black teachers, but that was it. And as I continued through my journey, I saw, like, year after year, the just sheer number of Black teachers that I had kind of dwindled to when I was a senior, I didn't have any. And so I went into college really thinking, like, not only is education not for me as like a pathway, is this really something I want to do in terms of, do I want to go to college and continue my career or my education? But to kind of fast forward through my college experience, I graduated, I needed a job, and I stumbled into an opportunity at my former elementary school, the school that I did feel really connected to and supported by, in the space that did have a lot of Black staff that supported me in my journey. And so I kind of raced there. I was excited to take on that opportunity and caught the teaching bug and been in it ever since.
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you, right? They give you the para role, they give you the entry level, and it's, it's, downhill from there, uphill, I guess I should say. And so my work with He Is Me really is kind of spearheaded by that experience and then my experience as an educator, right? I got into these spaces so excited to inspire the Black kids to want to do the same thing. And I get there and, like, nobody wants to be a teacher. They look at me like I'm crazy because I'm in education. And so I'm like, whoa, we got some work to do. It's not enough to just have the representation, right? There's a whole ecosystem that needs to exist for, specifically Black students to be interested in this career path. I was able to see a lot more of, like, my Black female students have some, interest maybe in that direction once I've been able to build relationships with them. But in those spaces, I didn't have a lot of Black staff counterparts to do the same work with the Black boys. And so really thinking about why He Is Me specifically, I do strongly believe in the need to increase representation, especially of Black males in education. As a student, as an educator, I've seen firsthand what the void is. I've seen firsthand what the impact is. And so, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it really started from my career. It wasn't something I was thinking about when I was growing up as being a teacher. I actually thought it was funny. My mom used to say I was going to be an educator, and I'm like, Yeah, okay.
Right.
And it was when I graduated and started studying education, when I went back to my high school, I told one of my teachers I was studying education and she thought I was joking because I just didn't seem like the route that I would take at the time. But when I did get into education, so I'm jumping way ahead from me working in a school, it didn't take too long to see that the same problems that I had in school were still happening. And that was mind-boggling almost because at that point, I've been out of school for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. And now I'm working here and it's the same problem in a whole new city in a whole different landscape, but it looks the same. And it's something that I had figured out. Obviously, I graduated high school and on to college, but a lot of people don't have that same path. And that's not the only path, but if that's the route you want to take, how is school not the place for that to happen, particularly for Black boys?
Right.
So as an educator working in a school building, I also noticed that the way I felt like I was being viewed and treated is the same way that our students are being viewed and treated.
Right.
I was having a conversation earlier where it's like we fall into two extremes. If something isn't something we do as Black males, and I say that as students or the adults in the building, if we don't do something that is 100% aligned to the way things used to be or the way things usually are, it's either this person is so incompetent, they don't deserve this job, they don't deserve this role, or they're trying to sabotage. They're trying to undo the whole school, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing. But nonetheless, there's not a lot of space for, let me help this Black man out. Let me support this young Black boy in this decision that he made. And that's also assuming that the decision needs some kind of correcting or, redirection. So for me, he is me as an opportunity to start really, really early to tell Black boys that school is a space that welcomes you, first of all. It's not even, the first conversation is not about being a teacher, it's about being welcome in a space that you're gonna come to for 13 years, for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You have to feel welcome in that environment first. And then fast forward to the Black males who are working there, they also have to feel welcome in that space. And I actually get this from you, Janelle, the teachers and the administrators in the building have the choice to leave. Right? The kids don't, they have to be there. So we have to make that a space for them. And so the Black male teachers, they do leave because they don't have to be there. They don't have to put up with the things that we face. So how can we make it a space that they stay? And this is something from Devin, who just was here having a conversation. You got to start with retention. We're going to have a revolving door of recruitment if that is what's first. So how do we keep the Black males that we have in the building first, so that they can create an environment for the Black boys to feel welcome and then for all the students to be successful. And then you have a pathway for those kids to want to be teachers. Education has a really unfair advantage over other professions because we get to be in front of the next generation of professionals every single day. The kids should be clawing at the door to be a teacher because we get a head start.
Right.
We can make it the environment that they want to be in and they'll come.
And some kids are.
Some kids are, right.
Based on their experience.
Right, it's their experience. And when you ask just about anybody why they do whatever they're doing in their lives, in their career, it's something about an experience that they had.
Right.
And why they're not doing certain things, probably because of an experience that they had. So we can just be smarter about the time we have with our kids.
Well said.
All right, I'm gonna move on to another question. Where do you see He Is Me in 3 years? Will it and should it always exist? I can start that question.
Okay, good.
I'll answer the second question first. No, this should not always exist.
Okay.
He Is Me is really solving problems that shouldn't be the case. We talk about the mentorship that we do. We talk about supporting Black males to become and remain teachers. But what we're really doing is building the infrastructure for a pathway. We heard from Superintendent Stiles earlier. As long as he continues on that strategic plan, get the right people on board, do all the things that he set out to do, they don't need he is me. The infrastructure is there. He has the pipeline, he has the systems, he has the programs. Now they have to do is just keep it up.
Right.
So we can get into more spaces and help build these pathways, these collective strategies. Then we don't need to be present. If we are still around in 100 years, it means something's not landing with people.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's something we need to do differently, or maybe it's something other folks need to do, but he is me should not exist in our society.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say one thing I double down on is in the same capacity, right? Like he is me doesn't exist in the same capacity. Maybe our role in the work shifts
Right.
at some point in the future. As we progress, as we, continue to support pathways be established and, sustain themselves over time. Yeah, I'd be curious to see like what our role develops into in that work, to keep it going.
I want to answer the first part of that question really briefly. It was, where do we see ourselves in 3 years as an organization?
Okay, yeah.
And my quick answer is to whoever asked that question, working with you.
Good answer.
We need to be working in every community when we have places that are ready. And I say ready, meaning really willing and have the capacity to invest in what it takes. We hear a lot of times, and we see a lot of programs where they're reaching out for the 21, 22, 23-year-old Black male who just got this degree last week and saying, hey, come teach. So after they've gone through college, a lot of times accumulating debt, and that's a whole nother conversation. Then we say, come to a job where you may be underappreciated. You may not have had a good experience for your 13 years. You may not get paid a lot, but we need the diversity. So come teach. So that to me is a place that's not ready. What I tell districts, and you've heard me have this conversation, if you want to have an I Am King program, for example, you need to see the boys in your program as the teachers at your school in 10 or 15 years. That's where the recruitment starts. It's not the person who just got their math degree from a local college. At that point, a lot of times they've already made up their mind because they've had these experiences in schools. So in 3 years, we need to be in spaces who are ready to invest that long-term investment that it really takes to change the education system in the way that we're trying to.
The only thing I would add to that is across the pathway, right? Is just being able to establish those connections. We talk about Dr. King's legacy and just this idea of collaboration, right? And being able to, have pathways available for Black males across the country is what it's going to take. So in the next 3 years, really expanding the model that we have across the country, working with you. If you're the person who asked that question, I'm going to write that down, because that's the right answer, right? That's the goal, and that is, how we approach the work is fully through collaboration.
Well, I think you just put your foot in your mouth on this one. I have a follow-up to that from someone else out there. Are there any plans for partnership with orgs not directly in classrooms? And they gave the example of a juvenile justice program. So how can we expand our work outside of the school and the college?
It's a good question. I'm not going to get too detailed into the what that could look like. I think when we think about partnerships and collaboration, there's so many ways it could look depending on the stakeholder, depending on the part of the work that organization kind of offers and supports. The one seed I'll plant is in thinking about how we want to really leverage networking, especially in these next few months, as we launch our community networks. And so the person who asked that question, I hope, would join our online community networks as a first step to really learning more about what our partnership model looks like, about learning more about what it looks like to partner with us, regardless of what type of organization you represent, whether it be directly in the education setting or a little bit outside of that. We need people to support in a lot of different capacities when we think about this work. And so I'm glad that somebody who's not necessarily in education is thinking about how to partner with us. Because that's all a part of it. And like I said, I don't have the specific example of what that would look like, but it looks like us kind of meeting and collaborating and figuring it out together. And that's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah, and if we think about it from a conceptual lens, if you've ever seen us at a career fair or anything like that, we have this 7-foot banner. This one out here now, it says Discover Teaching.
Right.
That's the point. For those younger ages of Black boys, is for them to realize, I could be a teacher. I think it was Dr. Travis earlier that was mentioning that someone is saying, like, when you leave a school, like planting those seeds early, and you can do that from anywhere.
Right.
So it can be a community center who has access to Black boys. I mean, that's a lot of Black boys you find there, a lot of Black men you see working and volunteering in those spaces. We can definitely leverage all of these opportunities to access Black males and have them just try it.
Right.
Just test it out. And that's the basis really of our programs. Some programs out there, when you sign up, you're like committing multiple years of your time or your career. And we intentionally don't do that because we want it to be organic. Most Black males who teach, myself included, we fall into it. I didn't think I was going to be a teacher. You know, I had an opportunity to be a mentor and I took it. And then you start to see the impact. And then you're like, there's something to this. It's something I'm providing that I was missing. And that's how we get into it. So we just need to open up the door. So to answer that question directly, we are very open to working with non-schools.
Right.
We've had some of those conversations with non-schools. You know, I know you've had some of those conversations with some organizations as well.
Yeah, especially like you said, the community-based organization, the spaces that serve you. Yeah.
So many questions. I don't think we can get through all of them. So I'll ask this one. How can we make education as a profession more appealing?
Ask myself that every day. There's a lot that could be said about making education more appealing. I won't go with the kind of, I guess, obvious answer around increased representation for students, although I do strongly believe wholeheartedly that that's a part of it. I think support is a part of it, right? Like when we are thinking about recruitment, we have to also be thinking about retention and ultimately retirement, right? What are the benefits in the education landscape? What does access to those, spaces look like for various stakeholders? And so I think to make it more attractive, especially when we think about our youth as the next generation to really engage in this work, it's very multifaceted, right? It's about what they see directly in front of them. It's about how they experience education directly. It's about how they're supported as students. It's literally about how they see their teachers treated.
Really?
Right. And so again, it's a conversation that includes so many different voices, so many different kind of leaders to come together to think about what is the experience that specifically people of color, if we want to, zoom into our work of working with Black men specifically, it's ecosystem, right? It's all encompassing as it relates to folks' experiences and how you perceive the experience of those people in those places. And really, working with entities to improve the standards in those spaces.
Yeah. For the sake of time, I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
I'm going to ask another question for me to answer, and then we're going to close out with one final one. So a question I see here are, what are the top 3 strategic priorities for He Is Me growth that require financial resources? So fantastic question. I won't break it down to 3, but I would say on a high level, what's really important to the way that we structure our work is to make it a light lift for everybody else. So I mentioned that we come in to build these pipelines, build these pathways in collaboration with folks. And you and I were both working at schools. We both were school leaders, we both were teachers, and we know how much work it is to be in that space. So a lot of our financial resources goes to building systems. You mentioned a online platform that we're working on, the curriculum, the trainings. We coordinate the meetings between like superintendents and the colleges. So a lot of our finances, our financial capacity goes towards building the entire infrastructure so that when we do talk to a principal or a superintendent or a college student, they can just walk in and go and not have to think about what's my lesson plan going to be, or where am I going to get my college student from. We try to eliminate that as much as possible, and a lot of our finances frankly goes towards that. Then the other piece will be the community aspect. Now, part of what makes it difficult or a challenge for Black males to remain teachers is that feeling of isolation. And although they may still be physically isolated, if one thing that the past few years taught us is that we can be together apart. So we try to create that community as well. So our college students here and our college students in Middletown can start to feel like I'm not going into this profession by myself, although you're 700, 800 miles away. So the last question I have for both of us is one final message, whether you want to clear up a misconception about He Is Me or one takeaway you want people to have, they could share it with somebody else. What would that thing be?
I like that question. Without saying too much, I would want to keep it pretty high level in folks' understanding of our work and how we approach our work, as viewing us very much as partners in the work of creating pathways, partners that facilitate spaces and provide resources, but really empower our partners to be able to lead these initiatives in a way that's sustainable. So I'll leave it at that.
That's sort of my answer.
Okay.
I don't think what makes He Is Me powerful is having the name He Is Me all over the place. If you are a school district, and into your comments about partnership, if you're a school district who is leveraging our resources, we want you to make them your own in a way. We have what we actually provide you is what it is, but how you implement it is how you implement it. We don't need you to throw He Is Me. In fact, we want you to take more ownership over what we are providing you. We're helping you understand it and helping you think about operationally what it looks like. But to Superintendent Styles, we want his families to feel like that's a Middletown program. Like, yes, they're leveraging our resources, but if you go to a math class, you don't think about who wrote the book, the textbook. It's just math class, at this school with this teacher in this classroom, and it's the same thing. It's not about He Is Me, it's about what the resources are providing.
Amen.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end that. Thank you, Janelle, and thank you to
Rob.
everyone out
been
there who submitted questions. There are still more here. If you do have any more questions that you didn't get to share with us, social media, email, hello@heisme.org. There's a lot of ways that you can reach us, and we'll be happy to talk.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.